So today we're going to be taking a look at a scenario where Japan forms an empire in 2022. Now I've been kind of staying away from the empire videos as of recently because they just haven't been doing as well. So I thought we'd maybe come back to it and try it again with Japan. Japan's a pretty popular country, and Japan had an empire throughout history, so it's a pretty feasible topic. If you can't tell already, obviously some things have changed about this whole entire video, my setup. I got a new computer, and I kind of had my settings wiped for OBS, so I had to redo all that. I also got my mic settings reset. So I have brand new mic settings, a new camera setting, so the crop is a little bit different, and then of course my entire setup as a whole is different. I'm going to be making a video about my new computer on my second channel, which is AdizzPro. There should be a picture of it on screen just like my last video. I'm going to link it in the description of this video, and I'll also put it in the pinned comments, so make sure to go subscribe if you haven't already. We actually hit 1,000 subscribers over there, which is pretty crazy because I don't even do that many videos on it, so thank you guys for that. But yeah, anyway, things are a little bit different, but actually I do think it's a lot better. The mic sounds better, the video quality is a lot better, so I think overall it's looking good. Without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into this empire video. So as I stated, Japan is going to be having their empire, and Japan lost a lot of land after World War II, obviously. So let's just go ahead and say that they kind of want that back. Maybe not all of it, maybe not in the same form, but they definitely want some more land. Do remember that in my empire videos, the country and topic is always buffed, so Japan is going to be a lot stronger here than they are in real life. So starting off, Japan is surrounded by very strong countries. We have Russia, China, South Korea, and then I guess North Korea. So Japan's going to kind of stray away from them for a while and kind of focus their attention down south. Here we have countries such as Vietnam, Taiwan, the Philippines, maybe even Malaysia, and Japan sees these countries as easy targets. So starting off, sorry the Philippines, but you guys are going to be invaded first. Now assuming that the US or any other Filipino allies don't get involved, the Philippines are just on their own here. So we have the Japanese Navy coming straight down from their southern isles and right down into the Filipino Navy. We have skirmishes, but eventually the Japanese Navy does prevail, which leads to a naval landing on the northern Filipino island. From here, Japanese divisions push down the coast and create a very large encirclement in the northern Philippines. The divisions are wiped out and the Japanese army continues on. Eventually, Manila is captured. From here, we have the Japanese Navy making a lot of island hopping campaigns, something they were good at in history. And eventually, after wiping out all northern isles, they make a landing on the southern isle. But unfortunately for the Philippines, we do have the surrender of the government. So the Philippines are now fully annexed by Japan and are a part of Japan. Of course, it's going to be separate states, so maybe like northern Philippines, southern Philippines, central Philippines. I'm not sure how they do it, but yeah, the Philippines are now Japanese. So once again, ignoring any allies that Malaysia might have, we have Japan declaring war on Malaysia. Now realistically, other countries would get involved in this war, but since this video is in favor of Japan and Japan is buffed, they're going to be just fine. So Japan uses the Philippines to their advantage and makes a landing in the eastern. So Japan uses the Philippines to their advantage and makes a landing on the Borneo side of Malaysia. From here, they take this area pretty quickly, and the other half of Malaysia is stranded over here near the Strait of Malacca. Pretty soon, we have the Japanese Navy making a landing, and eventually we have the surrender of Malaysia. And once again, we have full annexation, so Japan is now expanding down here into the South China Sea, and we actually have some countries not being a fan of this expansion, such as China. So in response to Japan's expansion, we have China making a new alliance with the countries of Southeast Asia and North Korea, which is the Anti-Japanese Expansion League. So with this, we have this alliance containing North Korea, China, Myanmar, Thailand, Laos, and Cambodia. And overall, this is a huge stop in Japan's expansion process. Luckily for Japan though, they do still have some open areas, such as Vietnam. They also technically have Taiwan, but I'm not really sure how China would, respond to that, seeing as they recognize Taiwan as their own. And then of course we have South Korea, which is a pretty strong country, and I'm sure Japan wants to build up before they invade them. So for now, we have Japan declaring war on Brunei, and as you can imagine, that ends pretty quickly. We also have the annexation of Singapore, and from here, the Japanese Navy readies for an invasion of Vietnam. Now, the Japanese Navy is a crucial aspect in Japan's expansion here. Obviously, they're going to have a strong navy in order to pull off all of these landings, so assuming that Japan built that up, they do just so. So actually looking back at the Japanese Navy real quick, we can see that this is pretty much what it looks like. So obviously the waters around Japan are under Japanese control, and then we have this corridor going straight down to the Philippines, which go through all these Japanese islands. Then of course, all of the Philippines is under Japanese control, all of the waters around Malaysia, other than the Strait of Malacca, is under Japanese control. And then we have the country that they are at war with, which is Vietnam. All of their coast is under Japanese control. And looking at this, we can actually see that the South China Sea is majorly under Japanese control. So I'm not really sure how China would react to this. Obviously, a war would eventually break out, but for now, Japan is going to continue having their field day. So finally, we have Japan making their landings in Vietnam. We have one over here in the south, one over here in the middle, and then one being made up north. Now, all of these landings are successful, and they cut Vietnam into 3 separate pieces. Now, all of these landings are successful, and they cut Vietnam into 4 different pieces. With this, we have South Vietnam falling pretty quickly, but we do see some Vietnamese push back over here in the north. In the middle, we see Japan expand upon the front and cut off even more of Vietnam. Now, America, China, and France have all known that the jungle of Vietnam is not a fun place for anyone. Even Japan knows this, but things have changed. Technology is a lot more modern, military is a lot more modern, and special units are designed for these geographic areas. So with this, we actually have Japan pushing up the Vietnamese coast and cutting off this large area from, well, what remains of Vietnam. The Japanese army starts to squeeze in, while up north they push up and meet up with the 3rd landing. From here, the Japanese Navy bombards the rest of the Vietnamese coast, which leads to a easy sweep through, and after losing a majority of their country, we have Vietnam surrendering. So yeah, Japan is fully annexing all of these countries. I think Brunei might actually be annexed by the Malaysian state, but for now it's staying as is. And yeah, we have no satellite states being connected up yet, so Japan is just going full-on imperial mode. So now Japan has to kind of think outside the box here. You know, there's Taiwan, but you might get invaded by China for doing that. There's South Korea, which is a really strong country, and then there's Russia, who maybe isn't a strong country. So Japan readies their navy and moves it up north, and we actually have their armies being stationed over here, and oh my god, Hokkaido. Okay, I gotta remember this stuff, because islands, man, I always forget the names of islands. So with the Japanese armies in Hokkaido, there's 3 naval landings that they're gonna make. One over here in this part of Russia, we have one over here in this part of Russia, and then one over here in this part of Russia. Now you can see my names are not good. I'm pretty sure this is called Sakhalin, I think. I'm not gonna Google it, it's fine. If I'm wrong, then I'm wrong. But after a couple months of preparing, we have Japan invading Russia. Now this is a surprise invasion, and Russia honestly did not see this coming. So the Japanese Navy makes a landing over here on Sakhalin, one made off the coast of Japan, and one made over here in southeastern Russia. Japan starts their island hopping campaign and pushes up the Russian Isles. They start a tremendous push over here in southeastern Russia, which is a very successful push. And then of course we have Sakhalin. It's gonna be really embarrassing if this isn't right. It gets fully invaded by Japan. We have another landing being made over here, which eventually leads to a cut off of Russia in the future. But for now, let's actually go ahead and take a look over here at Siberia, where the Japanese Navy makes a landing. And this area is completely undefended by Russia. Actually, just all of this is undefended. So in technical terms, we have Japan kind of invading this, although it would be impossible to invade. But let's just go ahead and say that this is under Japanese control. Seeing this, Russia starts to move forces out of Ukraine and over here into Japan. But unfortunately for them, it isn't enough time, as Japan makes a large encirclement of Russian troops over here. The Japanese army squeezes in, and eventually the troops are wiped out. Eventually, we do see those troops arrive, and a pretty large counter invasion is started. We even have a landing over here in Sakhalin, and a push back on the Siberian coast. Russia pushes down and manages to cut off a pretty large Japanese army. They obliterate the forces, which turns out to be a horrible move by Russia, because Japan uses this as moral, and the army starts to push back. Sakhalin is completely retaken again, and after taking over all of southeastern Russia, we have peace negotiations being started. Alright, looking at this peace treaty here, we have Russia not losing that much land, but still a notable portion of it. Of course, we have this far eastern area being lost to Japan. Sakhalin is re-annexed by Japan. These islands go back to Japan, and then they have a little portion of Siberia. So just like 1912, Russia loses to Japan once again, and now Japan is looking like a ginormous Pacific empire. From all the way down south to Malaysia, to all the way up north to Siberia, Japan is definitely one of the strongest countries, if not the strongest in the world. So now Japan prepares for their invasion of South Korea. And then once again, we're ignoring diplomatic ties with South Korea and the rest of the world. So if Japan invades South Korea, we're not going to have the US get involved, because this video once again is in favor of Japan. We can't have these foreign powers getting involved and messing up Japan, because that wouldn't be fair for Japan. So anyway, the Japanese Navy surrounds South Korea, and eventually war is declared. Japan takes advantage of their complete naval superiority and makes multiple landings around the Korea. Just notably low, we have a pretty strong one over here near Seoul, which actually takes the city. And yeah, Japan does some linking up, and South Korea at this point is pretty much surrounded. Now this would not be an easy task for Japan. Like I said, South Korea is probably the strongest country that Japan has fought so far, but assuming all goes well for them, we eventually have a pretty, messed up fall of South Korea here. The army is completely obliterated and Japan prevails. Looking at a peace treaty, once again we have Japan just fully annexing South Korea, and it is at this point that Japan is preparing for their invasion of Southeast Asia. Now at this point, Japan doesn't actually really want to invade China because China is a strong country and geographically they're in a good position, but instead they want to invade Southeast Asia in order to have more control over trade in the region, and then of course imperialism. So preparing for their invasion of Southeast Asia, knowing that everyone's in alliance, they decide to go for Taiwan first to see what would happen. Japan declares war on Taiwan and troops land near Taipei. China at this point does nothing and Japan decides to go through with the invasion. The fall of Taiwan happens pretty quickly and it is once again fully annexed by the Japanese in a peace treaty. So with this, Japan has nowhere else to go. So now it is time for their invasion of the purple countries. So comparing the navies of the two areas, we have Japan having complete naval superiority. They even took control of the Strait of Malacca. Now, I'm not sure how that would go internationally. I'm pretty sure there would be a giant coalition formed against them, but for now they hold control over that, and the purple team is not looking too hot now. So finally, we have Japan declaring war on Thailand, and immediately we have Thailand's neighbors joining in on the war. We actually have China and North Korea kind of holding out on joining in, even though this violates their peace conference. We were talking about two communist countries here, so who would have actually known? But anyway, we have Japan starting their giant invasion of Southeast Asia. Troops from Vietnam push into both Cambodia and Laos, and it is here that we see the Japanese army fighting at its full force. Now do keep in mind that Japan's army is fully mobilized. There's no defending troops over here on the main island. Every troop is being used in their invasion. So we have troops over here in Malaysia, Vietnam, South Korea, and then this Russian part over here. We also have troops stationed over here in Taiwan in case they need to make a naval landing. And yeah, Japan is going full throttle. So first we have the surrender of Cambodia, followed by the surrender of Laos and Thailand. This leaves Myanmar, which is a relatively weak country, and right before Myanmar capitulates, we have China finally joining the war. So yeah, this just got interesting for Japan. Now luckily for Japan, they were anticipating this, so it's not going to be that big of a problem, although they are going to have to rearrange some troops. The only problem is they didn't anticipate it happening at this point. They thought China would join in a lot later, so they kind of moved some troops off the defense in Vietnam and Laos, leading to a pretty vulnerable area over here in the north. Anyway, we have the Chinese and Japanese navies exchanging fire, and naval supremacy along the Chinese coast is in sight for Japan. Focusing back down south though, we have China invading Vietnam, while also invading northern Laos. We actually have the Japanese army struggling with supply here, which is pretty surprising considering they control all these waters. But unfortunately for Japan, we actually have China completing an encirclement, and we have a large number of Japanese troops stuck over here in Myanmar. Now, once again, like I said, this was anticipated by Japan, but not to this scale. So Japan pulls out their secret treaty, and yeah, just like, World War II nations, there were some secret treaties signed, and in full support and aid of Japan, we have India joining the war. Now, we all know that India and China have some problems in real life, so this wouldn't be too out of the world. And once again, knowing that India has bad problems with China and China's allies with Pakistan, and Pakistan and India don't like each other, we also have Pakistan joining this war. Now, this was also called for, and it's also justification for India to invade Pakistan, because honestly, on the border with China, not much exchange would happen since, the Himalayas are right here. So as this does kind of serve as a distraction for China, we mainly just have India invading Pakistan. Islamabad is captured in the first couple days, since it is, right on the border of India. And then up north, we have India capturing their claims over Kashmir. Back over here in Southeast Asia, we have Japan connecting back up with their Myanmar army and pushing back Chinese forces in the area. Vietnam is completely recaptured, and for the first time, we have Japanese troops setting foot in China. Over in the Korea, we have South Korea pushing up into North Korea, and Japanese troops stationed over here push down into eastern North Korea. They eventually lose their coast, which leads to the annexation of this area by the Japanese Navy, and things aren't looking too hot for China here. Down south, Japan gains naval superiority over southeast China, which leads to the capturing of Hainan, and a naval landing being made in southern China. From here, this connects up with Vietnam, and Japanese troops swarm into China, with China losing a lot of their major coastal cities, and the Japanese Navy successfully obliterates the Chinese Navy. With this unfortunate event for China, we have the downfall of their entire alliance and country. Over in the west, we have India gaining control over Pakistan, and Indian troops crossing over into Myanmar. They eventually meet up with Japanese troops, and they manage to capitulate Burma. Looking ahead into the future here, we have a pretty bad, it's bad for China, let's just say that. So China does hold nukes, and as well as India and Pakistan, but as you know from any of my videos, I do not like to use nuclear bombs because I think they just ruin the scenario, and really it isn't really fun to watch. So assuming that China doesn't go berserk and launch all their nukes, we have have a pretty simple scenario. Japan manages to capture Beijing, and after starting to lose a majority of their country, we have China finally surrendering, or I'm not really sure if they would surrender, but they get captured. So let's go ahead and take a look at this ginormous peace conference. Alright, so taking a look at this peace treaty here, we have just the complete collapse of China. Starting in Southeast Asia, we have Japan annexing Laos, Cambodia, and Thailand, and then Myanmar is partitioned between India and then Japan. Up north, we have the complete annexation of North Korea and Manchuria, and then we have Japan doing their thing and annexing large parts of the Chinese coast. As for India, they gain a lot of land over here in northern Pakistan and China, and their claims over Kashmir are finally internationally recognized. We have them getting land off Pakistan, which kind of cripples Pakistan because I'm pretty sure there's an important river around here. And then as for China, we have the release of Xinjiang and then Tibet, and then China is just left alone. So yeah, that is all that Japan is going to be expanding their empire in this video. Let's go ahead and take a look at the states of Japan. Alright, so the states of Japan here are pretty simple, so let's go ahead and break it down. Up first, we have the Japanese mainland, which consists of Sakhalin Islands and then Siberia. We have the Korean state, which is as shown here. The Manchurian state, which is combined with this Russian claim, but that's fine, so this is all Manchuria. We have Taiwan, we have the Filipino state, the Eastern Malaysian state, Borneo, Malaysia, the Northern Malay Peninsula state, Burma, Thailand, Cambodia, South Vietnam, Laos, North Vietnam, and then the Chinese coastal state. Now the Japanese empire is complete in 2022. Obviously, for the fifth time now, this video was in favor of Japan. Realistically, they wouldn't be able to pull this off, and they're once again looking like a pretty nice Pacific empire. I could have made them expand even more, so we could have had them taking even more of China, and then Indonesia, Papua New Guinea, and Australia. But for now, I think this is probably just good for, Japan's ambitions. So if you guys enjoyed this video, do make sure to leave a like on it, and especially make sure to subscribe. Showing support on this video lets me know if I should continue the Empire videos or not, because right now I'm kind of in between. I like doing the Empire videos because they're fun, but they don't really perform that well. So, showing your support on this video would really help out the series. Once again, make sure to check out the second channel, AdizzPro. I'll be posting a new PC building video over there. And yeah, so once again, thank you guys for watching this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.